Since it was first founded in 1972, Cultural Survival, a non-profit organization based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA, has been at the forefront of the international indigenous rights movement. Among many other works, Cultural Survival produces indigenous rights radio program and uses them as a tool for its advocacy work towards indigenous people's rights to their land, languages, and cultures. Through radio program producers, Cultural Survival gathers stories from indigenous peoples around the world and produces programs into different indigenous languages. The statistics puts that it has so far produced over 900 radio programs and has distributed them to over 1,500 radio stations around the world.
Culture, and so cultural rights are not particular to indigenous peoples, but certainly
in these connections, one of my interests during the 15th session of United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues was to see and learn from Cultural Survival's radio program producers.
Yes.
Therefore, I followed 2 radio program producers of Cultural Survival throughout the sessions from May 9th to 20th, 2016 to know about their ways of working. They were interviewing indigenous representatives who had traveled to the forum to share their struggles in their home country. One of the radio program producers is Aves, who is a program associate at Cultural Survival. She comes from Maya Quiche indigenous community from Guatemala. She says one of the main objectives of Cultural Survival is to preserve and protect indigenous culture. And the Cultural Survival thinks that culture is very important for indigenous peoples and it needs to be preserved. How important the culture is for indigenous people in particular, UN Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights.
To encourage them to use the cultural rights that we have internationally and nationally.
a nation stays alive when its culture stays alive. And I think one could say the same thing of a people. A people stays alive when its culture stays alive.
Aves also talked extensively with a number of indigenous representatives who traveled to New York to attend the forum.
I would say close to 300,000-400,000 in places of exile that all want to return to their indigenous homeland.
By profession, Aves is a sociologist, but enjoys producing radio programs on the social issues and cultures. How challenging the work of radio program productions to the person coming from indigenous background. Aves says,
It's actually not challenging as long as you like what you do. If you like to interview people, if you like to share a story, I think it's actually an exciting thing to do. I think everybody could do this.
Aves observed that indigenous peoples around the world are facing a host of challenges, from violation of their rights to relocations from their traditional land, suicide, and so forth.
Deep, profound issues like relocation of communities, like persecution of indigenous leaders who protect their territory, their land, and their resources. Situations so hard like the suicide.
Rosie Gonzalez is another radio program producer to Cultural Survival. She produces programs in Spanish languages. Sharing about her work, Rosie says,
Mi trabajo es ser productora de radio, estamos haciendo entrevistas a todos los participantes, conociendo los distintos casos, sus demandas, sus propuestas y pues todos los aportes que puedan hacer para que el foro permanente pueda tener unas buenas recomendaciones y en el documento final de este foro.
Rosie also shared about her indigenous community in Guatemala.
Soy de Guatemala, de Zumpango, Zacatepeques, y en este momento nos encontramos acá en Nueva York, Estados Unidos.
Like Aves, Rosie also was interviewing to several indigenous representatives attending the forum in New York. The Cultural Survival uses the community radio to inform indigenous communities of their rights. Aves, sharing how powerful the media is, encourages to use them as much as possible.
Media has power. Information is power. Sharing information is very important to create awareness, to communicate about what's happening at the moment, and also to communicate how to organize. I think media has a strong role in people's lives. I think everywhere we receive information, if we are not looking at information in the internet, we're listening to radio, we're watching TV, we are very connected. And we need to use this as a tool for us to organize and to empower ourselves and to think and to see that we are not alone, struggling, and not to get discouraged from what's happening to us.